Mr. President, I've had a lot of people ask me where we are on the USA Freedom Act, and we actually have a very interesting, easy choice. We can either pass the bipartisan bill that the House representative passed with a majority of Republicans, majority of Democrats voting for it, or we can let the whole Patriot Act expire at the end of this month. Some may prefer that. I think there's a number of improvements that the House made which would protect our freedoms and protect our security, and that's what we ought to have. People have talked about short-term extensions. Well, you could have a 2-day extension, or you could have a 5,000-year extension. You'd be extending something that doesn't exist. The fact of the matter is, the House gave us their bill in plenty of time to act upon it, to amend it if we wanted to send it back, to do a conference. But now they've gone on recess. If we don't vote for their bill, we'll end up at the end of the month with nothing. There'll be nothing to extend. We could feel good about passing an extension, but you can't extend something that is dead. And I've worked for more than 2 years with members of Congress from both parties, and in both chambers, to develop the USA Freedom Act of 2015. It's a common sense surveillance reform bill that protects Americans' privacy and ensures our national security. Now, the bill doesn't go nearly as far as the bill I first introduced in October 2013 with Congressman Sensenbrenner. It doesn't go as far as USA Freedom Act that was filibustered last November by then Republican leader McConnell and others. Now, the incoming, at that time, incoming majority leader said he wanted to wait and see how it would be with a Republican majority, was able to rally his members to delay reform, but we shouldn't delay any further. The Americans deserve to have their privacy restored, their national security protected. There should be no more excuses. Let's look at what we have. In the bill that Senator Leahy and I have supported, the USA Freedom Act of 2015, it's not just our support, it has the administration's support, it has the support of the Director of National Intelligence, of the Attorney General, of the FBI Director, a supermajority of the House Representatives, the technology industry, privacy and civil liberties groups, librarians, the NRA. I mean, when are you ever going to find all these groups coming together? Well, they come together because they know it's a good bill. The support for our bill continues to grow. Just yesterday, national security experts at the Conservative Heritage Foundation conclude the USA Freedom Act strikes a balance between maintaining our national security and protecting civil liberties. Why? Because it's a reasonable and responsible bill. When you get the civil liberties groups and the NRA together, maybe it has something. The Heritage Foundation and privacy groups. Mr. President, I've been here 41 years. I've seen very, very few pieces of legislation where these groups come together. But even if they didn't, and they did because it's a responsible and reasonable bill, but even if they hadn't come together, it's the only option left for any senator who wants to avoid a sunset of the surveillance authorities at midnight on May 31st. We won't be in session. The other body won't be in session. The one thing that will happen is our current authorities will sunset. They'll go away. Wow. Can't you hear the cheers from some of our enemies? Last year, When the current Senate Majority Leader led the filibuster of the USA Freedom Act, we were told the Senate needed more time to consider the issue, and the new Senate would take up the matter under new leadership. All right. We've known these sunsets were coming for years, why I brought the bill up last year. There's been nothing done on this urgent matter this year. No public hearings, no committee markups, unlike all the public hearings and committee markups we had last year. But in contrast, the House leadership has acted responsibly and decisively. They moved the USA Freedom Act of 2015 through the Judiciary Committee. They had markups and hearings, and they passed this bipartisan bill overwhelmingly. We had significant debate on this issue this week. I've heard senators across the political spectrum have spoken at length on the Senate floor about their views. Most of these senators have urged us to reform the government's bulk collection program, which is, of course, the same as the way the vast majority of Americans feel. But there have also been voices urging more surveillance. We have heard the familiar fear-mongering and demands for data retention mandated on private telecom companies. Well, I disagree with those senators that voiced that perspective, but they've at least been heard. Unfortunately, the clocks have been run out. The House worked very hard on this. They completed their work, and they left. They're not coming back until after the surveillance authorities are set to expire. And the House leadership has made clear they will not pass an extension, even if they were in. And we passed an extension. They made it very clear, the Republican and Democratic leadership, that they will not take it up. So here's the decision. It's a very, very simple one. We can let the three provisions at issue expire. Some may like that. Frankly, I don't. Or we can pass the bipartisan and bicameral USA Freedom Act of 2015. Now, we all know that the NSA has for years been using Section 215 of the Patriot Act to sweep up phone records of innocent Americans without any connection to terrorism. I'm sure there are innocent Americans who may be in the chambers or are hearing what we're saying. They've had their phone records swept up. Well, I don't think anybody can feel very comfortable about that. We also know that the NSA used a similar legal theory for years to collect massive amounts of metadata related to billions of emails sent to and from innocent Americans. A parent sending to a child, how's my granddaughter's code coming along, or how did grandson do in school, or somebody writing to a friend back and forth. Well, the American people oppose this indiscriminate dragnet collection of their records. Not only that, the courts do too. They found it to be unlawful. And the House representatives listened to the American people. They listened to the courts. They voted overwhelmingly to end this program through the USA Freedom Act, and assumed that, of course, the Senate would do what the courts have said, what the American people have said, what the vast majority of Americans said. Last November, I warned that we would not have much time in the new Congress. And the American people are demanding action. In fact, when this was filibustered last year, people should go back and see the number of letters and emails that came pouring in to the Capitol saying, we want this passed. But yet here we are, Congress racing against the clock to act before the sunsets take effect next weekend. Well, this is a manufactured crisis. I think there are some who hope that enough senators will be scared by the prospect of these authorities expiring, and so they'll blindly vote in favor of a clean extension, even though that goes nowhere. We've all seen this movie before. We know that opponents of the USA Freedom Act simply want to delay again. Well, I don't frighten, because many Americans, certainly my constituents, are wondering validly what have opponents of the USA Freedom Act been doing for the past 6 months. The rapidly approaching sunset has been on the book for years. The original sunset provisions were written by Republican leader Dick Armey and myself. It's not as though this deadline suddenly snuck up on the leadership or the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, who's just now considering alternative proposals. Remember, we're just a few days away from the expiration date. But despite this urgency and the extensive debate we've been having for many months, the only bill that has been filed by the opponents of the USA Freedom Act is a 2-month rubber stamp of the Patriot Act provisions, a bill the Senate sponsors know cannot pass the House even if they are in session, and because they're not, if we were to pass it here, it becomes a nothing burger because there'll be no law to extend. Now, I read in the press there may be an alternative proposal in the work. It may include a provision to keep the bulk collection program in place for more than 2 years. Well, even if you could legally pass that, it's entirely unnecessary. Just this week, the NSA director stated in a letter to leaders McConnell and Reid, the NSA only needs 180 days to transition to the new targeted program established by the USA Freedom Act, which gives them the 180 days, not 2 years. The 180-day transition has been part of the USA Freedom Act for more than a year. During all the negotiations about the bill, neither the NSA or the intelligence community have ever raised a concern about this provision. In fact, we have on the record that they supported. I'd ask consent that a copy of the May 20th letter from Admiral Rogers, the head of NSA, be entered as part of the record.
Without objection.
We all know a last-ditch attempt at further delay is just too late. So we have two options: pass the USA Freedom Act or let the provisions expire. A growing majority of the Senate, a straight up or down vote, supports the USA Freedom Act. If we pass it today, the president can sign it today or tomorrow. But also the intelligence community, instead of, is this law going to be here or is the law gone, they can move forward with the certainty they need to protect the American people. Senator Leahy and I, along with a bipartisan group of senators, ranging from Senator Durbin to Senator Heller to Senator Schumer to Senator Cruz, and that's going across the political spectrum, are moving for the responsible path forward. We've worked for 2 years on this bill to end the NSA bulk collection of Americans' phone records. Republicans and Democrats have worked together for 2 years to end the NSA's bulk collection of Americans' phone records, something that every one of us in a town meeting back home, I don't care what state you are, if you ask Americans are there, do you want a bulk collection of all your phone records? You know what the answer would be. Of course not. Well, the clock's run out, but there is a responsible choice before us. Let's pass the USA Freedom Act today. Then we have the improvements, we keep America secure, and we don't have all our authorities expire. Mr. President, I see other senators on the floor, and I will yield the floor.